The dust swirled across the empty platform as Eliza Harmon clutched her 6-month-old daughter against her chest, watching the train that had brought her to Naco, Arizona territory, disappear into the distant heat waves of 1883. Her husband's letter had promised he'd meet her at this forsaken station, but as the last whistle faded and the station master locked up for the night, the bitter truth settled in her stomach like a stone. James wasn't coming. "Madam, we're closing now," the station master said, not unkindly but with finality. "Train ain't due back through for 3 days. Town's half a mile yonder." He pointed toward a cluster of buildings shimmering in the late afternoon heat before tipping his hat and walking away, leaving Eliza alone with her child, 2 trunks, and the crushing weight of abandonment. Tears threatened, but Eliza blinked them back. Sarah fussed in her arms, hungry and uncomfortable in the desert heat. Their water was running low. The nearest building looked impossibly far in her impractical traveling dress. "Need a hand, madam?" The voice startled her. A tall figure on horseback had appeared at the edge of the platform, silhouetted against the setting sun. As he moved closer, she could make out a weathered face beneath a dust-covered Stetson. His blue eyes assessed her situation with a single sweep. "Seems like you've been stranded," he said, dismounting with easy grace. He was dressed like most men in these parts, practical clothes worn by hard work, a gun belt secured at his hip, and boots that had traveled many miles. "My husband was supposed to meet me," Eliza explained, hating how her voice quavered. "We've come from Boston. He sent for us after establishing his medical practice here." The man's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "James Harmon." "Yes," Eliza replied, hope flaring. "You know him." The stranger's jaw tightened. "Madam, I think we should get you and the little one into town." He hesitated. "My name's Wade Yancy. I ranch outside of town." "Mr. Yancy, please, do you know where my husband is?" Wade's gaze dropped to her daughter, then back to Eliza's face. "Madam, James Harmon left Naco 3 weeks ago, cleared out his office and rode south with Mabel Jenkins from the Lucky Slipper Saloon." The world tilted beneath Eliza's feet. She'd spent their savings on train tickets, sold their furniture, left her family behind. All for a man who had abandoned them. "You'll be wanting a place to stay," Wade continued gently. "The boarding house in town isn't fit for a lady and child." "I have some money," Eliza said stiffly, pride rising through her shock. Wade glanced at her fine traveling suit, now wrinkled and dusty. "No offense intended, madam, but Naco isn't Boston. Your money won't last long here." Sarah began to wail, and Eliza bounced her automatically, her mind racing through impossible options. Wade cleared his throat. "My sister Martha lives at my ranch. It's clean, safe, and there's plenty of room." He met her eyes directly. "You'll leave here with me instead." It wasn't really a choice. Night was falling in a land Eliza didn't know, with a child to protect and nowhere to turn. "I can pay you," she insisted. Wade shook his head as he effortlessly loaded her trunks onto his pack horse. "We can discuss arrangements later. For now, let's get you both out of this heat." Before Eliza could protest, he lifted her and Sarah onto his horse with surprising gentleness, then mounted behind her. His arms created a secure cage around her as he took the reins. And despite everything, she felt a moment of relief as they started toward the cluster of buildings that comprised Naco. The town was smaller than Eliza had imagined, just one main street with wooden buildings on either side. Men lounged outside the saloon and their gazes followed Wade's horse as it passed. "That's the doctor's office," Wade said quietly, nodding toward a small building with a freshly painted sign. The windows were dark, the door locked. Eliza turned her face away, clutching Sarah tighter. They continued past the general store, a small sheriff's office, and the Golden Nugget Saloon before Wade turned his horse toward the open country beyond. "It's about 4 miles to my ranch," he explained. "Not a grand estate like you might be used to, but it's solid." "I grew up on a farm in Vermont," Eliza replied. "Before I married James." Wade made a non-committal sound. "Farming knowledge might serve you well out here." The implications of her situation were beginning to sink in. No husband, no home, no prospects in a frontier town where she knew no one. The ranch appeared as the last light faded, a substantial log house with several outbuildings, nestled against a backdrop of hills. A woman emerged from the main house as they approached, wiping her hands on her apron. "Wade, I was about to send Miguel looking for you." The woman stopped short when she saw Eliza and the baby. "Oh my." "Martha, this is Mrs. Harmon and her daughter," Wade said as he dismounted. "The doctor's wife." Martha's expression shifted to one of pity. "Oh dear, you poor thing, come inside at once." Wade lifted Eliza from the horse as easily as he might lift a child. For a moment she was acutely aware of his strength, the firmness of his hands at her waist. Then he stepped away, all proper distance. "I'll bring your things," he said, turning to the pack horse. Martha bustled Eliza into a surprisingly comfortable home. "You must be exhausted, and the baby needs tending." She efficiently took Sarah, cooing to her. "When did she last eat? Poor lamb is hungry, I expect." Eliza found herself seated at a sturdy kitchen table with a cup of hot tea before she could fully process what was happening. The kitchen was warm and inviting, with bundles of herbs hanging from the ceiling beams and copper pots gleaming in the lamplight. "Wade told me about your husband," Martha said gently. "I'm sorry." "I don't understand," Eliza whispered. "His letters spoke of building a future here. He sent for us." Martha bounced Sarah expertly on her hip. "Some men aren't worth the paper their promises are written on. But you're here now, and you've got this little beauty to think of." Wade entered with her trunks, setting them down carefully. "I've asked Miguel to prepare the cabin for Mrs. Harmon. It's small but watertight and close enough if she needs anything." "Nonsense," Martha declared. "She'll stay in the house tonight at least. Sarah can sleep in the cradle. It hasn't been used since the Petersons' last baby, but it's still good." Eliza found her voice. "I can't impose. It's no imposition," Wade said. "The cabin needs airing out anyway." That night, lying in a strange bed with Sarah sleeping nearby in a borrowed cradle, Eliza let herself weep silently. Her marriage, she now realized, had been failing long before James left for Arizona Territory. The handsome young doctor had grown restless in Boston, complaining about the established physicians who controlled the best patients. When he'd announced his plan to go west, she'd believed his talk of opportunity and fortune. In the morning, Eliza washed her face in the basin of cool water Martha had provided and squared her shoulders. She had her daughter to think of now. Sarah was her responsibility alone. Martha had breakfast waiting, eggs, bacon, and biscuits that put Eliza's Boston cook to shame. "I've been thinking," Eliza said after thanking Martha for the meal. "I should return to the town today. Perhaps there's work I could find." Wade, who had been quietly drinking his coffee, set down his cup. "What kind of work are you thinking, Mrs. Harmon? I can sew quite well." "Or perhaps the school needs a teacher." "The school has old Mr. Finley," Martha replied, "and Widow Jones does most of the sewing work." "I'm sure I could find something," Eliza insisted. "I won't be a charity case." "Nobody's suggesting charity," Wade said. "But Martha could use help around here. The ranch keeps me busy from sunup to sundown, and she's handling the house, garden, and chickens herself since our last housekeeper married and moved to Tucson." Martha nodded enthusiastically. "I've been saying we need help for months." The cabin would give you privacy, and we could provide meals and a small wage. But I know nothing about ranching, Eliza protested. You said you grew up on a farm, Wade reminded her. A small dairy farm in Vermont. Nothing like this. Chickens are chickens, whether in Vermont or Arizona, Martha said pragmatically. And you'd learn the rest. Eliza looked between them, uncertain. Why would you do this for a stranger? Wade's expression was unreadable. Because it's the right thing to do. And so Eliza found herself installed in the small cabin 50 yards from the main house. It was simple but clean, with a bed, table, 2 chairs, and a small stove. Wade's men moved her trunks in, and Martha provided linens and a small cradle for Sarah. The next morning, Eliza rose with the dawn, dressed in her plainest dress, and walked to the main house where Martha was already preparing breakfast for the ranch hands. "Good morning," Martha greeted her cheerfully. "Coffee, please. How can I help?" Martha set her to work immediately, and Eliza discovered that while the specifics might be different, the rhythms of ranch life weren't so dissimilar from the Vermont farm of her childhood. By midday, she had helped feed the hands, learned the rudiments of caring for the chickens, and begun to understand the layout of the sprawling ranch house. Wade appeared at noon, dusty from the morning's work. He removed his hat when he saw Eliza, a gesture of respect that touched her. "How are you settling in, Mrs. Harmon?" "Well enough, Mr. Yancy. Your sister has been very kind," Martha huffed. "She's been working like she was born to it, already figured out the temperamental stove better than I ever did." A ghost of a smile crossed Wade's weathered face. "Glad to hear it." Over the next weeks, Eliza found herself falling into a routine. She cared for Sarah, helped Martha with household tasks, and gradually expanded her duties to include the vegetable garden and eventually the accounts, which she discovered Martha detested managing. Wade was a constant presence, though often at a distance. He was unfailingly polite, always asking after her and Sarah's comfort, but maintaining a careful propriety. Sometimes, Eliza would catch him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. It was during a violent summer storm that Eliza first glimpsed beneath Wade's stoic exterior. The rain had been falling in sheets for hours when a tremendous crack of thunder sent Sarah into wails of terror. Eliza had just managed to soothe her when pounding on her cabin door made them both jump. Wade stood there, rain-drenched and urgent. "You need to come to the main house. The arroyo behind your cabin is flooding." Without questioning, Eliza grabbed Sarah and a blanket. Wade scooped them both up and ran through the downpour toward the house. Inside, he set them down carefully, water pooling at their feet. "Thank you," Eliza said, breathless. "I should have thought of the risk when I put you in that cabin," he said, his voice tight with self-recrimination. "The arroyo rarely floods, but when it does, we're fine," Eliza assured him. "No harm done." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "You're not what I expected, Eliza Harmon." It was the first time he'd used her given name. "What did you expect?" she asked. "A city woman who'd crumble at the first hardship." Eliza laughed despite herself. "I may have lived in Boston for 5 years, but Vermont winters and farm life taught me resilience long ago." That night, as the storm raged, Eliza and Sarah slept in Martha's room while Wade checked on the livestock. When Eliza woke at dawn, she found him asleep in a chair outside their door, as if standing guard. The floodwaters receded, but something had changed. Wade began to include Eliza in discussions about the ranch. He taught her to ride properly, not side saddle as she'd learned in Boston, but astride in a divided skirt Martha fashioned for her. He showed her the boundaries of the ranch, the best grazing lands and the water sources that were precious in this arid country. "You have a good eye for the land," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch, Sarah sleeping in Eliza's lap. "You notice things." "It's beautiful here," she admitted. "Different from Vermont, but beautiful in its own way. Do you miss it?" "The East," Eliza considered the question. "I miss my family. But Boston?" "No, it never felt like home. And here?" Wade asked quietly. Eliza met his eyes. "It's beginning to." The summer progressed into fall, and with it came cattle drives and the bustle of ranch life at its most demanding. Eliza found herself taking on more responsibility as Martha fell ill with a fever that left her weakened for weeks. "I don't know what we'd have done without you," Wade said one night after Eliza had managed not only to care for Sarah and Martha, but also to feed 12 hungry cowhands and keep the house running smoothly. "I'm glad to be useful," Eliza replied. "It helps me not to think about." She trailed off, unwilling to speak of James. "Have you heard anything from him?" Wade asked carefully. "No, and I don't expect to." Eliza's tone was matter-of-fact, but Wade must have seen something in her expression. "He was a fool," Wade said quietly. "A damn fool to leave you." The words hung in the air between them, charged with meaning neither was ready to acknowledge. It was in late October that trouble came to the ranch. Eliza was hanging laundry while Sarah played on a blanket nearby when she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. 3 riders appeared, and something in their manner made her scoop up Sarah and back toward the house. Wade emerged from the barn, rifle in hand, as the men reined in. "Yancy," the leader called. "We need to talk about that water rights dispute." "There's nothing to discuss, Blackwell," Wade replied, his voice calm but carrying an edge Eliza had never heard before. "The creek runs through my property." "It runs through mine first," Blackwell spat, "and you've been damming it up." "I've done no such thing, and you know it." "The droughts affected us all." Eliza could see the tension in Wade's shoulders as the men dismounted. There were 3 of them against Wade and the 2 hands who had appeared from the corral. "Maybe we should ask your pretty housekeeper what she thinks," Blackwell said, his gaze sliding to Eliza. "Heard in town she's the doctor's runaway wife. Seems she has a habit of picking the wrong men." Wade's knuckles whitened on his rifle. "Mrs. Harmon is under my protection. You'll speak of her with respect or not at all." "Protection? Is that what they're calling it these days?" Blackwell laughed. "Way I hear it, Harmon's been gone months and she moved in here pretty quick." Eliza stepped forward, her chin high despite her racing heart. "Mr. Blackwell, I believe you've mistaken hospitality for something improper. Now, if you have business with Mr. Yancy, perhaps you could conduct it without involving me or frightening my daughter." Blackwell looked taken aback by her cultured voice and direct manner. Wade used the moment to step between them. "You've said your piece, Blackwell. I'll ride out tomorrow to check the creek, but I tell you now there's no dam on my land. Now I suggest you leave before this gets unfriendly." The standoff stretched for several seconds before Blackwell spat on the ground. "This ain't over, Yancy." The men mounted and rode off in a cloud of dust. Wade waited until they were out of sight before lowering his rifle. "Are you all right?" he asked Eliza. "Yes. Who was that man?" "Vernon Blackwell. Owns the next ranch over. He's been trying to push me out for years, but this drought has made him desperate." Wade's expression darkened. "I don't like him knowing about you and Sarah being here alone most days." That evening, after Sarah was asleep, Eliza found Wade on the porch, cleaning his rifle with methodical care. "Thank you for defending my honor today," she said, sitting beside him. Wade set aside his work. "There was nothing to defend. You've conducted yourself with more dignity than most could manage after what you've been through. Still, people talk. I know what it looks like a woman living on a bachelor's ranch." "Let them talk," Wade said firmly. "I know the truth, and so do you." Eliza studied his profile in the fading light. "What is the truth, Wade?" He turned to her then, his eyes reflecting the first stars appearing in the sky. "The truth is that I've never met a woman like you, brave enough to start over, strong enough to face whatever comes, kind enough to care for my sister like she was your own family. Martha has been good to me," Eliza said softly. "We both have reasons to be cautious," Wade continued. "You were betrayed by a man who promised to love you, and he hesitated. Yes, I was engaged once, back in '75. Her name was Caroline. She died of typhoid before we could marry." His voice was steady, but Eliza could hear the old pain beneath the words. "I'm sorry," she said simply, placing her hand over his. "I never expected to feel this way again," Wade said, turning his hand to clasp hers. "But Eliza, I find myself thinking of you as more than just someone under my protection. Much more." Eliza's heart quickened. "Wade," a shot rang out in the darkness, and Wade was pulling her to the floor of the porch before she fully registered what was happening. Another bullet splintered the wood of the railing where they had been sitting. "Get inside," Wade ordered. "Stay low and away from the windows." Eliza crawled to the door, her skirts tangling around her legs. Inside, Martha was already moving towards Sarah's cradle. "Blackwell?" she asked tersely. "Probably," Eliza confirmed. Taking Sarah into her arms, 3 more shots came in quick succession, followed by return fire from the bunkhouse where Wade's men were housed. Eliza clutched Sarah, who had awakened and begun to cry. "It's all right, sweet girl," she soothed, though her own heart was pounding. The gunfire continued sporadically for what seemed like hours but was probably only minutes. Then came shouting, more shots, and finally silence. The door opened and Wade appeared, a bleeding gash across his temple. "It's over," he said grimly. "Blackwell and his men are gone. Miguel's been hit in the shoulder, but he'll live." Eliza set Sarah in Martha's arms and went to Wade, examining his wound. "You need this cleaned," she said, guiding him to a chair. As she gently washed away the blood, Wade caught her wrist. "I'm going to the sheriff tomorrow. This has gone far enough." "I should go with you," Eliza said. "As a witness." Wade shook his head. "It's too dangerous." "I won't hide while you face this alone," Eliza insisted. "Besides, I need to go to town anyway. It's time I faced what's there." The next morning, they rode into Naco together, leaving Sarah with Martha. The small town looked different to Eliza now, less foreign, less intimidating than it had that first day. The sheriff, a grizzled man named Garrison, listened to their account of the attack with narrowed eyes. "Blackwell's been pushing his luck for years," he said when they finished. "But shooting at a man's home is crossing the line. I'll ride out today." As they left the sheriff's office, Wade hesitated. "Where do you want to go next?" Eliza took a deep breath. "My husband's office." The building was still empty, its windows dusty. A faded notice on the door announced premises for rent. Eliza stared at it, feeling a strange sense of closure. "He really is gone," she said quietly. "Are you all right?" Wade asked, standing close beside her. "Yes." Eliza realized it was true. "I am." They turned away from the office and continued down the street. Outside the general store, a woman in an elaborate dress stepped directly into their path. "Well, if it isn't Wade Yancy," she said, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes hard as she looked Eliza up and down. "And this must be the doctor's abandoned wife I've heard so much about." Wade's jaw tightened. "Mrs. Harmon, this is Vivian Price. She owns the Lucky Slipper Saloon." "Pleased to meet you," Eliza said with more composure than she felt. "Is it true your husband ran off with one of my girls?" Vivian asked bluntly. "Vivian," Wade warned. "It's all right," Eliza said. "Yes, Mrs. Price, I believe he did." The saloon owner's expression softened fractionally. "Mabel was always reaching above her station. Thought a doctor would set her up proper. For what it's worth, I told her he was the kind that doesn't stay put. Thank you for the confirmation, Eliza said, though I've come to the same conclusion myself. Vivian laughed, a genuine sound that transformed her face. Good for you, honey. Men like that aren't worth the heartache. She glanced at Wade. Present company accepted, perhaps. After Vivian moved on, Wade and Eliza continued their errands in town. Eliza found herself greeted with curiosity, but not unkindness by the townspeople they encountered. By the time they headed back to the ranch, she felt as though a weight had lifted from her shoulders. Thank you for today, she told Wade as they rode side by side. For letting me face this on my own terms. You're a remarkable woman, Eliza Harmon, Wade replied. Most would have crumbled under what you've endured. Not with the support I've had, she said softly. 3 days later, Sheriff Garrison rode to the ranch with news. Blackwell had been arrested and would stand trial for the attack. Found evidence he's been damming the creek too, Garrison added. On federal land, not his own property. Water should be flowing right again soon. That night, after a celebratory dinner, Eliza walked out to sit on the porch steps, enjoying the cool evening air and the vast canopy of stars above. Wade joined her, offering his jacket, which she gratefully accepted. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How different my life is from what I imagined when I boarded that train in Boston," Eliza replied. "I thought I was traveling toward a future with James. Instead, I found—" She paused, searching for the right words. "What did you find?" Wade asked quietly. Eliza turned to face him. "Myself. And perhaps something I wasn't looking for but needed more." Wade took her hand, his touch warm and steady. "Eliza, I know it hasn't been long since you learned of James's betrayal. I wouldn't rush you, but I want you to know that my feelings for you are deeper than I ever thought possible again." "Wade, let me finish," he said gently. "You and Sarah have brought life back to this ranch and to me. I can't imagine going back to how things were before you arrived. I don't want to." Eliza's heart swelled with emotion. "I feel the same way. When I think of the future now, I see this place. I see you." Wade's smile transformed his weathered face. "Is it too soon to speak of marriage? Perhaps for some," Eliza said. "But we've faced danger together, worked side by side. I know your character, Wade Yancy, in ways that matter far more than years of courtship." He leaned forward then, and his kiss was gentle but full of promise. When they parted, Eliza felt as though something had finally settled into place in her world. What will people say? She wondered aloud. A woman remarrying so soon after her husband's departure. "They'll say you're practical," Wade replied with a smile. "And that I'm the luckiest man in the Arizona territory." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Naco, with Martha beaming proudly and Sarah dressed in a gown Martha had sewn from one of Eliza's Boston dresses. Sheriff Garrison stood as Wade's best man, and even Vivian Price attended, declaring it the most romantic thing since statehood. That evening, as they stood on the porch of their home, for it was truly home now, to Eliza, Wade pulled her close. "Do you remember what I said to you at the train station?" he asked. Eliza nodded. "You'll leave here with me instead." "I meant it as a kindness then," Wade said. "I had no idea you'd capture my heart so completely." "It seems we rescued each other," Eliza replied, resting her head against his chest. Spring brought new life to the ranch calves in the pastures, seedlings in Eliza's expanded garden, and news that Sarah would have a sibling by winter. As Eliza's body changed with the pregnancy, Wade became ever more attentive, often finding excuses to return to the house during the day just to check on her. "I'm perfectly fine," she assured him one afternoon as he appeared in the kitchen doorway for the 3rd time that day. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "Not my wife," he replied, coming to rest his hand on her growing belly. "Not carrying my child." The wonder in his voice melted any exasperation Eliza might have felt. She covered his hand with her own. "Our child will be born into love, Wade. What greater blessing could there be?" In December, as a rare snow dusted the hills around the ranch, Eliza gave birth to a son they named William, after Wade's father. Martha declared him the most beautiful baby she'd ever seen, though she said the same about Sarah, who at nearly 2 years old took her role as big sister very seriously. Life settled into a rhythm of seasons, cattle drives and harvests, quiet winter evenings and busy spring mornings. Sarah grew from a toddler into a spirited young girl who could ride almost as well as her father. William was joined 2 years later by another brother, Joseph. Sometimes, on summer evenings when the children were asleep and the work was done, Wade and Eliza would sit on the porch steps just as they had during their courtship. They would talk of the day's events, plans for the ranch, and dreams for their children's futures. "You ever regret it?" Wade asked once, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the sunset paint the desert in gold and crimson. "Coming west to a man who wasn't worthy of you," Eliza considered the question. "How could I regret the journey that led me to you, to our family, to this life we've built?" "Still, you suffered, and found strength I didn't know I possessed," she countered. "Found love deeper than I knew was possible." Wade pulled her closer. "That day at the station, I had no idea I was meeting my future." "Neither did I," Eliza said with a smile. "But I'm grateful every day that, when you said you'll leave here with me instead, I had the courage to say yes." As twilight deepened into night, they remained on the porch, two people who had found in each other not just love but partnership, respect, and the kind of happiness that comes from facing life's hardships together and emerging stronger on the other side. From an abandoned woman with a child and uncertain future, Eliza had become the heart of a thriving ranch and family. And Wade, who had once believed his chance at love died with Caroline, had found that the heart has an infinite capacity to begin again when it finds its true home. In the vast landscape of the Arizona Territory, their love story was perhaps just one of many. But to them, it was everything, a testament to second chances, to courage in the face of adversity, and to the unexpected ways that happiness finds us when we least expect it.